Hey guys, it's Jeff, and today we are taking a look at what might be the 2019 MacBook Pro. I am super excited just because I'm kind of falling in love with the MacBook Pro again and how much it can do, simply because I've been using the iPad Pro 12.9-inch model and it just hasn't been getting the job done. I can't edit properly on the iPad, and I can't do a lot of things on the iPad, and one of the biggest things is just the file management. I love having file management on the go, specifically with my MacBook Pro. So I guess it's just time to talk about the MacBook Pro once again. Okay, so a lot of you guys have probably been hearing about a possible 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I am personally a fan of just bigger MacBook Pros. Essentially speaking, the bezels would be gone and you just have a full screen MacBook Pro, which would look extremely nice. But this render is of a 13 and 15-inch MacBook Pro, so this artist clearly believes that the 13 and 15-inch models will still remain the same. Maybe Apple will not fix that whole hinge issue that they had before with the 17-inch MacBook Pros. Who knows? But let's just go ahead and take a look at the render. I just wanted to let you guys know that this is not in reference to the 16-inch model. It is in reference to a possible 15-inch and then 13-inch model. So let's just get started with slide number one. They kind of had, as I said, a very product-like presentation here, as Apple would put it. So the first slide is just showing kind of what the MacBook Pro would look like. Now let's move on, and they're talking a lot about what we might be seeing in the new MacBook Pro lineup. So we're seeing this designer basically say that, hey, we're going to be seeing Apple making processors. So they are basically saying that we are going to see an 8-core and 6-core processor being made specifically by Apple, not Intel. So that's really cool. And then they're also saying that we will in fact be seeing up to 128 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM or memory. So that's really impressive. That is not even something that we are seeing on today's iMac. So that is really something cool to see being put into a Pro device like the MacBook Pro. And I'm really excited to see more memory. Now, you might be saying like up to, that is not going to be like the standard. You are going to obviously have to buy that extra memory to be put into your device. There are not too many machines out there that Apple makes that has the top spec as the standard kind of buy option. So you'd have to upgrade to that 128 gigabytes. Now let's move on and talk about what else they are kind of saying that will happen with this new MacBook Pro in 2019. And they are saying that we are going to see a very OLED-like display. It's not going to be OLED specifically, but it is going to have mini LED technology, which I think would be really cool. I think having an OLED panel on the MacBook Pro lineup would just be a little bit too pricey. I don't think that the price point is there just quite yet. No other manufacturers have really been pushing for an OLED panel lineup in their laptops, so I don't think Apple will be the first one to do it, simply because their devices are already expensive enough, and if they're making their own processors, a lot of R&D and everything is going to have to go into that. So any products with those new processors will definitely be seeing a price bump. Now, the last thing on this slide here is basically a touch bar with haptic feedback. And I personally am not a fan of the touch bar. I don't really see a use for it. I don't use it all too often. So I'm not really excited for this change with haptic feedback. That's not really something that I would necessarily say is a big deal, but I guess it would be nice to have if you are a fan of the touch bar. So let's move on to some of the finer details regarding the specs. Now, they are saying up to 128 gigabytes of memory, and the core boost for the Apple made processor, they are saying will go up to 5.2 gigahertz. And 5.2 gigahertz nowadays is not something that is extremely out there. We are seeing processors in the current gen MacBook Pros go up to 4.8 gigahertz. So I think jumping up to that 5.2 gigahertz level, especially with a specially made chassis and as well specially made chips by Apple, I think that is very much achievable. Now, another stat that they are predicting is 9.5 gigabit per second speeds for SSDs, and this is huge. We haven't been seeing these speeds on laptops at all. This is something that will kind of be revolutionary if we get it. I think that will really increase the performance with with video editing, photo editing, and everything like that. I think that will make this device, the MacBook Pro, a really pro kind of device that will really take the user experience to that next level. Now, the next thing that they're talking about is up to 16 hours of battery life. And I think this is a little bit advantageous just because with the current gen MacBook Pros, I can only get about like 2 to 3 hours of maybe good video editing. If I'm doing any rendering, you can kind of just say goodbye to that battery life. So I think up to 16 hours is a little bit advantageous. I think with just browsing the internet and everything like that, we might just get about 7, maybe 8 hours of battery life, but that is all to be determined when Apple announces the 2019 MacBook Pro. Hopefully there will be even more batteries packed into the device, but of course you have to worry about heat and everything like that affecting the processor from the batteries. So it's just kind of all a mess when it comes to battery life versus performance. We definitely want to get the most battery life, but also a good amount of performance as well. So let's move on and talk about what they are saying will be the difference between the 13-inch models and the 15-inch models. So they are saying that the 13-inch model, which will have an M6 processor, will be running at 3.8 gigahertz and then core boost up to 5.2 gigahertz. And the 15-inch model, which will have more cores, will have a 3.2 gigahertz base clock and then up to a 5 gigahertz boost clocked. And this will be basically selective cores, so it won't be on all cores. So just keep that in mind. Now, the next thing that we will be talking about in regards to this kind of mock-up that they have here is the processors. And the processors are supposed to make renderings and everything like that up to 2 times faster and even above that. Now, I am a fan of Intel. I really like Intel. I like AMD as processors and everything like that. I think Threadripper is a great option in 2019, but I do think that for specifically the MacBook Pro and as well the Mac Pro or the Pro applications, I think that Apple needs to make their own processor. Intel is not making processors that will basically optimize the Pro applications that us Pro users are using, like Final Cut Pro and everything like that. I think Apple will have to make their own, and then we will see performance of those Pro applications grow immensely. Now, the next thing that this designer is predicting is we will see Face ID on the MacBook Pro lineup in 2019. And I too am very hopeful for this change. I would love to see Face ID on the 2019 MacBook Pros, and what they are predicting is it will be underneath the screen. So you won't even see any Face ID mechanism like you do on the current gen iPhones. I don't want to see a notch in the 2019 MacBook Pros, or in fact any MacBook Pros. I just want to see Face ID underneath that glass so that I can use it for user authentication. That would be really cool. Touch ID has been an absolute pleasure on the MacBook Pro, but I just think Face ID would just be just that little bit faster and would really work for a lot of the Pro users out there. Now, moving on to some other predictions, they have OLED panels, they have a bunch of keyboard changes and everything like that, but they don't really have any language kind of supporting those claims. So I'm not going to go too in-depth into that, but in regards to OLED, don't expect an OLED panel for the 2019 MacBook Pros. OLED is an expensive technology. I think that we will be seeing mini LED technology which works similarly to OLED. I'll have an article linked down below. I'm not going to explain it now, but it is a good technology and will save on battery life and produce good quality images on your screen. Now, one of the biggest things that I just ask Apple right now, if you guys are watching this video, work on thermals. I think that all of the things that this designer has said is absolutely fantastic. I want to see it on the new MacBook Pro. I want to see a 2019 MacBook Pro kind of take other laptops and just obliterate them with speed and power and everything like that. But it's not going to happen unless you change the chassis. We've had this current gen chassis for a very long time. It does not work with the thermal limitations of a CPU and GPU. It just thermal throttles the CPU and you are losing speed when that happens. So Apple, you definitely need to work on a newly designed chassis. And here in this mock-up, I am seeing a very thick chassis. I'm seeing a thicker chassis. It looks a little bit more well-rounded. I'd love to see what this designer thought of when they were thinking of like vents and everything like that. But for one, we need more fan in the current gen MacBook Pros. We need more of a fan controller, like a better fan controller, and that really has to do with software. And then we just need a better chassis. So upgrading from the current gen MacBook Pro, I really want to see a good chassis, because if I don't see a chassis that supports the heat that will be coming out of whatever CPU is used, I just won't buy it, because this MacBook Pro that I have here, it's 2018 model. It's very limited simply because the thermals are not great. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video on what might be the 2019 MacBook Pro. I am super excited to see all of the new products from Apple, the Mac Pro, the MacBook Pro, maybe a new iPad this year, and of course, as per usual, the iPhones that come out every year. If you are excited as well, make sure to leave a like on the video, get subscribed to get updates on when all of this stuff comes to real life, and also hit the bell button to get updates as soon as we release that content. Anyways, guys, thank you again for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.